So you've been sued in Alabama by LVNV, Midland, Portfolio Recovery, some other debt collector or debt buyer. What in the world do you do? My name is John Watts. I'm a consumer protection lawyer in the state of Alabama. And I'm doing this video series, which is really an update to something we did all the way back in 2017. But we're doing this where we answer a couple hundred questions. And the reason we do this is we realize a lot of people, when they either being threatened with being sued by a debt collector or they have been sued, before they decide, well, I'm going to do this on my own or hire a lawyer, they really want to get an idea of what's out there. They want to research, do their due diligence. And so that's the point of this video series. So let's talk about some of the dangers you're facing right now. And I think you know this, and that's why you're willing to invest time watching a video series. But look, you've been sued. Maybe you have been threatened with being sued, and you think, okay, should I call the law firm, the collection firm? Well, that's an option, but there are some real dangers of doing that. What if I do nothing? Well, then a default judgment happens. What does that mean? Or what if I agree to a consent judgment? What does that mean? And if there's a judgment, can my wages be garnished or levied? And how much? What percentage? How about my bank accounts? Can they wipe those out? What does this do to my credit report if I've been sued or if there's a judgment against me? And if there is a judgment, can I really lose my car or my home to a sheriff's cell? Can they come seize my home or my car? And, there's a ton of information. Obviously, you're on YouTube. You type in, what do I do that I've been sued by a debt collector? And there is some information that is sort of put up with bad motives, okay? People just trying to rip you off. But I think there's a lot of information that's out there with good intentions, but it's wrong. Or if it's not just inherently wrong, it may be wrong for you because it's, hey, here's what we do in North Carolina. Well, totally different rules than in Alabama. So if you've been sued or you're threatened with being sued in Alabama, you really need to understand your options in Alabama. So let's talk about that. I have two goals for you, or two reasons I want you to watch this video series. The first is I want you to know what your options are in Alabama. You've been sued in Alabama. What are your options in Alabama? Because if you don't know what your options are, how do you make the right choice? I mean, you might make the right choice just sort of by pure luck, but I want you to know what your options are so that you can make a good, educated decision for what the best thing for you, not for anybody else, but the best thing for you. That's what I want you to be able to do. And I want you to take action. You see, if we know what to do, but we don't do anything, it's worthless. That old expression, knowledge is power, absolutely wrong. Knowledge is potential power. But if we don't do anything with it, we might as well not know it. I mean, if I say, I'm trying to get in shape and I have read every exercise book, I am the smartest person in the world on exercise and getting in shape, and I don't do anything, well, what's that knowledge? What's the point of it? Okay? So we have to know what our options are. We have to get that knowledge, and we have to take massive action. Okay? Now, your action may be to contact my firm. It may be to do this on your own, maybe to contact somebody else. It doesn't matter to me. I just want you to know your options, and then you decide what's the best choice for you, not for anybody else, for you, and then you take that action. So let's talk about something that I have used for a number of years, and clients seem to really understand this, and that's what I call the GPS model. So how do you get to Atlanta? Well, sort of the obvious answer is, well, you go east. Maybe you go southeast, you go northeast, you go east on I-20. Somehow, it's over to the east. But what if we're starting off in Savannah, Georgia? If we go east, we're going to get wet, okay? What if we're in New York? Well, we're going to need to kind of head south. What if we're in Miami? We need to head north. So, sure, if we're in Birmingham, we go east. But the only way we know which direction to go is we have to know our current location. Now, we say, I know where I want to go, okay? So, Atlanta. So, your iPhone or Android phone goes, okay, I know where you're wanting to go. Let me figure out your current location. Then I'll give you the options. You can go this route, or we can go this other route. There's traffic on this third route, whatever it is. But we need to know where we're going and where we're starting from. And so that's what we're going to do in this video series, is say, okay, where are you? In other words, have you been sued? Have you been served? If you've been served, how many days ago was that? How many days do you have for your particular type of court that you were served in? And looking at that and looking at your options, then you can decide what's the best path for you. So for those of you who don't know me, who haven't watched videos or haven't read our articles on our website, who am I and why should you pay attention to me? So I put this first bullet point, I knew nothing about collection lawsuits. I guess in thinking about that may not be exactly correct, because I did represent some folks, but it was sort of one-off. My focus then was purely on personal injury, wrongful death. And so I might have a client that was sued and okay, well, I don't even know where small claims court is. Okay, what is small claims court? And so I made a change in 2006 where we started representing consumers. And now we represent 40 to 50 consumers a month who have been sued by debt collectors or debt buyers. So you can kind of do the math and see that's hundreds of people every month. And so at this point, it's thousands of consumers. And this is important. I sue debt collectors. I sue debt buyers. So I file lawsuits against Midland and Portfolio and Midland and all these other debt collectors. I sue them every month. I sue the credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, Innovis. There's other credit bureaus out there, Clarity, all different, LexisNexis. So that's kind of the context of what we do. Now, speaking of people who have been sued, we not only represent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of consumers a year who have been sued, but we also help a tremendous number of consumers handle their cases on their own. It's not for everybody. And if you're not going to spend money, you got to spend time and energy and effort. But there are times where it makes sense to handle this on your own. We also train lawyers in Alabama and other states. Now, this video series is specific to Alabama. That's where I practice. But we train lawyers here in Alabama and other states. And I've helped lawyers in other states set up what we often call a debt defense practice. So how do you represent people who are sued? And people come to us and say, hey, I see what you're doing in Alabama. Can you help me do that in my state? And so we've helped lawyers in other states. And there's a ton of information on, obviously YouTube that you're watching, but also on alabamaconsumer.com. So I'm not going to say any more about this other than you can see, what's on the screen. You've heard what I've talked about. And what I would say is listen to what we say and decide, does that make sense to you? Does it seem reasonable? Does it seem accurate? And ultimately, you have to make the decision. Whether you do this on your own, whether you hire a lawyer, you have to make the decision on what information to listen to, what information to disregard, to not give it any consideration. And I hope that this video series you'll find to be very, very helpful to you. And I know the time we did this before, and I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of videos on being sued by debt collectors, but the video that we did in 2017, which I think was like 2.5 hours long. So we're going to break this one up, okay, into kind of each individual question, or maybe we'll grab a couple questions at a time. But that video, people have told me still to this day how tremendously helpful that is. And so I thought, well, it's time to do an update. And so here's a little disclaimer. You can read what's on the screen. I'm not your lawyer. Every situation's different. There's always exceptions. And this is for Alabama lawsuits only. Look, all this is common sense, okay? Just the point of these videos that I'm doing is to give you information so that you can ask the right questions. Maybe you're asking the question of yourself. Maybe you're asking it of a lawyer. But the point is, I want you to have some good knowledge so that you can make the best possible decision for you. So here's how this video series will be organized. And what I've highlighted will be the very next section of videos that we'll do. And we'll talk about kind of in general, like, can debt buyers really buy debt? Then we'll have a whole series of questions on being served, because that's a huge issue. And then we'll talk about your 5 options. We've been sort of preaching these 5 options for many, many years, and it's still, I think, the most effective way to look at, okay, I've been sued. What are my options? We think these 5 options are still the best way to look at this. Then we'll talk about, okay, your answer or your response to the lawsuit. And then kind of think in terms of a timeline. We have the stuff that happens before trial, and then we have the stuff that happens during the trial, and then after the trial. And then we'll have some sort of closing questions and maybe talk even more about credit reports then. So we will look forward to having you on this journey with us. And the next video will start off the sort of general information about lawsuits. And then once we finish all those, we'll go into being served and then the rest of the items. So if you have comments, certainly you can put those below. If you have very specific questions in Alabama, reach out to me through my website, alabamaconsumer.com. And if you're in another state, now you can ask general questions and I'll give you kind of general answers. But if you're looking for a lawyer in another state, then feel free to reach out through alabamaconsumer.com. And I'll see if I happen to know a lawyer in your state or give you some resources to find a lawyer in your state. So appreciate you guys joining me, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.